Ladies and gentlemen, Preparedness Expo 94 would like to thank you for attending the show this evening. We're very proud and honored to present to you tonight William Cooper. Mr. Cooper is the host of the international shortwave radio broadcast, The Hour of the Time. Mr. Cooper is also the author of the underground bestseller, Behold a Pale Horse. And the title of his lecture this evening is Treason, the Death of a Nation. So let's give him a big hand, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Last night I left off when Harry Truman essentially had signed the United Nations Treaty, pushed through Congress, the United Nations Participation Act, and established the National Security Act of 1947, which was created to act as a curtain behind which the intelligence community could act to destroy the sovereignty of not only this nation, but all the nations of the world, and create the realization of the dream of the internationalists and the secret societies, and bring about the formation of a one-world totalitarian socialist government. I only have just a little bit of that history to complete and then get into the subject of tonight. When they had accomplished all of this and began seriously working to bring about the destruction of the sovereignty of the United States of America and of all the other nations of the world, the American people initially understood what was happening and protested it vehemently. They were very angry. There were newspaper headlines, there were books written, pamphlets distributed declaring Harry Truman to be the greatest traitor that ever lived in this country. And that's arguable because it didn't begin with Harry Truman, nor has it ended with Harry Truman. The fact, ladies and gentlemen, is that this had been a dream of those who practiced the secret religion of the mystery schools or the mystery religion for hundreds and thousands of years to eventually bring about what they called the Golden Age. Some even refer to it as the return to the Golden Age. You look back through history and try and find what they're talking about. Return to the Golden Age implies that there had been a Golden Age sometime in the history of the world. When you look at the history of the world, you can't find any time that fits their description, which was a time of peace and prosperity, time that there was no lawlessness, time of perfect government where everybody was a citizen with equal rights and all of this baloney that they spout. It just didn't exist. And it's not going to exist in the future because the problem with the world is not with government. The problem with the world is not with the world itself. The problem with the world is within man. What we all struggle against each day in our lives that we know is just under the surface within ourselves, all men and women struggle with on a daily basis. The idea that imperfect man ruling imperfect man is bring about a perfect time of perpetual utopia on the face of this earth is flawed from the inception. That's why when our forefathers founded this republic, they gave us the admonition that we had to be the watchdogs of the government. That to be the watchdogs of the government, we had to have a foundation in religion, whatever religion we wanted to. The majority of the people, of course, at that time were Christians. That we had to have virtue. And if the American ideal, the American man and woman, had virtue and functioned as the watchdog of their government, then the government too would have virtue, would be a good reflection of the people who made up the government, of, for, and by the people, and would itself be good. And for many years it was. It's not anymore, and everybody in this country, wherever I go, tells me that they can feel it in their gut that something is terribly wrong. It's not something that just sprang up overnight, folks. It's been building for many, many years. We have watched all of the rights protected by the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights, fall by the wayside, to the point where Americans are more afraid of the police than they are of the criminals, to the point where parents no longer tell their children that if they're in trouble, go find a policeman because he's your friend. Instead, they find themselves cautioning their children to stay away from policemen. Now, this is just backwards of what I was taught when I was a kid. What has happened in this country? There has been a concerted effort to destroy the traditions that this nation was built upon. The ideals, the fundamental principles have fallen by the wayside. When you see things happen, such as the Weaver incident in the state of Idaho, when you see things happen like Waco, Texas, when you see things happen like the savings and loan debacle, when we experience all over this country the ripping apart of the social fabric that built this nation, the family, when we see our children being taught in school things that we know are wrong, when they're not taught what we sent them to school to learn, and many of them graduate from high school and can't even write their name, we're watching literally the death of a nation. The death of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, is imminent. If you were to judge the illness of the country by what has happened to its foundation, then we could say that it's already dead. If you judge whether or not this country has expired by the spark of freedom, the spark within the people that made this nation great, then we still have a chance, because that's not dead with many of us. There are many reasons, ladies and gentlemen, why we have come to the state that we find ourselves in now. And I'm going to tell you, before I go any further, that the primary fault lies with us. The people of the United States of America over the years have abdicated their responsibility as the watchdog of the government. They have denied their participation to the process. Yet many of these who do not participate in the process are the first to complain when something goes wrong. And to those people I would say you don't have a right to complain. We can look around and we can find as many people, as many organizations, as many faults to place upon other people that we want to. But the truth is, we are responsible for everything that has happened. And we have to get our head on straight before any changes can be made. Now, before I was able to do what I'm doing today, before I became able to function in the capacity of a watchdog again, to be responsible again as an American citizen, there came a day when I had to look at myself in the mirror and I had to say to myself, Bill, you've been stupid. You've been stupid for most of your life. Most of the things you've done in your life, you've done for the wrong reasons. You've believed the wrong things. You've followed blindly without checking, without investigating. You have accepted what you've been told without question. You went off across the ocean to fight a war as a patriot for your country that had nothing to do with your country or patriotism or the protection of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Now, that was a hard thing for me to do, but I did it. And the most important thing that I've ever done in my life was that very thing. Because if you can't recognize where you are at and who you are and what your responsibility is then you cannot go forward and make any positive changes. So I'm going to ask all of you to go home, look yourself in the mirror and see if you can do that. If you can do that, and if you can start anew, and you can pledge to yourself that from now on, you're going to listen to everybody and you're going to read everything. You're not going to seek to further some agenda, but you are going to honestly set out from that point onward for the rest of your life to search for the truth and nothing else, because the truth is the only thing that matters in this world. It is what we must dig out. It is what we must understand, and it is the only thing that we can afford to live our lives by. Period. Nothing else, ladies and gentlemen, matters. Nothing at all. We are in a position now on the edge of a great precipice. We're at the edge of the abyss, not to mince words. And if we take one more step in that direction, we're going to fall forever. The fall will not just be the death of the United States of America completely, because the spark within us that made this country great will be gone. On paper, the nation is already gone. It will literally be a giant step backward in the evolutionary progress of humankind on this earth, back into slavery. See, no peoples in this entire world had ever been free in the history of the world until our forefathers penned from the hand and minds of man the Constitution of the United States of America and the Bill of Rights. This process began with the Declaration of Independence. We were the first people on the face of the earth to ever truly be free, not owned by anybody, not subjects of anyone, but sovereign kings and queens in our own right. The government was created as our chattel servant. The government was our slave. Never before in history had that happened. Now we're in the process of going backwards from the penultimate achievement of all mankind throughout the history of the world. We are prepared to go backwards, back into bondage, back into slavery, back to become subjects of some king, queen, monarch, emir, sultan, or despot. And when I look at this audience, it almost makes me want to cry, because when I think of how many people are here listening to this and how many people are out there who will never hear it, it doesn't give me too much of a feeling that we're going to make much progress in the right direction. So the biggest battle that we have cut out for ourselves is education. Educating our neighbors, educating our teachers, educating our law enforcement officials. All of these people doing what they are doing, helping to bring the end of this nation, the end of freedom about, thinking that they are doing the right thing all the while, because that's what they have been taught to do. So they have to have their brain cells rearranged, and you people here are going to have to do it, along with me and many other people. I encourage all of you, instead of giving gifts on Christmas and birthdays, give shortwave radios, because that's the last place where you will hear free speech and will hear the truth anywhere in the world. It's also where you will hear the news from other countries that you will never hear in the United States. It's where you can listen to Radio Moscow, British Broadcasting Corporation. It's where you can listen to Radio Chile. Nobody's ever thought of Radio Chile, have they? When you begin to listen to these things, whether you ever listen to my broadcast or not, doesn't make any difference. I hope that you do. You will find that what you're hearing from foreign sources is drastically different than what you're hearing from your own AM/FM radio and television sets. This has to be remedied. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy pushed through Congress the Disarmament Act. He then made an address to the United Nations, explaining to the United Nations his plan, which really wasn't his plan. When you understand the power structure, you have to understand that the president is the puppet for the power that really exists. It's a place where the public can focus their anger and their applause. And if the public's ire is aroused enough, the president can be assassinated, he can be impeached, he can die in office of natural causes, or he can finish the end of his term and you can elect somebody else, and it will not damage the real power that brought him into office, that gave him his direction, that advised him. And folks, this is why it doesn't make any difference whether you elect a Republican or a Democrat. The outcome is always the same. You see, you may vote for one of the two or the three or the four, but the truth is you never picked who you were going to vote for. You don't have a choice. Doesn't matter who you elect, it belongs to them. John F. Kennedy was promoting one world government. John F. Kennedy pushed through the Disarmament Act. John F. Kennedy signed it into law. John F. Kennedy presented the plan of the power structure for one world government to the United Nations. Then he did something very strange. He began to print United States notes, which conflicts with everything that he had done before because they're non-interest bearing. If the central bank doesn't control the money of the United States of America, they can't dictate the course of our history. He began to do something else. His brother, Robert Kennedy, began to seek out and prosecute the heads of organized crime in America, which is another branch of the Illuminati, or the power structure. You see, when Christopher Albert Pike created the council, the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in the United States of America, he was communicating with Giuseppe Mazzini in Europe, who was the European head of the Illuminati. It was Giuseppe Mazzini who created the mafia. It was Giuseppe Mazzini who taught them their secret degrees of initiation. And this is why, throughout our history, you see organizations like the FBI, the CIA, the Office of Naval Intelligence operating with the mafia. Because the people that control these organizations all belong to the same organization at the highest levels, and that is the ones who call themselves Illumined, the Illuminati. If you doubt the existence of this group, in their own writings, in their own books, in their own statements, in their own speeches, they themselves reveal that this is true. We have documented it. I've done 42 hours of radio broadcasting on this subject alone, from the beginning of the dawn of man all the way up to the present day. We've documented it. And unlike others, I don't just say something, I document it. I give you the references, I give you the books, I give you the places where you can go and find the proof. I use their own words, their own speeches, I quote them extensively. So there is no longer any doubt whatsoever that there is a conspiracy. There has been for many, many years. In modern times today, you cannot really say that it's a conspiracy because nothing is hidden anymore. They have become so arrogant in their actions and in their beliefs that they honestly think that you are not smart enough to figure out what they are doing. You are not smart enough to catch them in their own words. You are not smart enough to compile the documentations. You are not smart enough to understand it, put it together, act upon it, and defeat it. They are not afraid of you any longer. And we've got to turn that around. You have to understand what is happening. You have to understand who is behind it. You have to be able to teach others. You have to be able to show them the proof, not just talk about it. And you must be able to act. Everybody around America is being prepared through a system of created crime waves through a process of addicting young Americans and minorities on addictive drugs in order to create the idea within the minds of the American people that we have to give up our rights to get the crime and drugs off the streets. Most of the people in our prisons have been convicted of victimless crimes. What appears to be a tremendously overburdened justice system is one of the greatest scams that's ever existed. Our prisons are overflowing, yes, because somebody got caught with a little pot, because somebody decided to screw up their body by taking drugs, because they control the supply of the drugs. They can create an increase in the crime rate or a decrease in the crime rate simply by making drugs more expensive or less expensive. If they want a crime wave in Chicago, they raise the price of drugs so that those addicted have to go out and mug somebody or rob somebody in order to be able to pay for it. It scares the hell out of the middle class. The statistics are doctored. You don't understand that most crimes committed by blacks are committed against blacks. But that's not what you're told. You're given raw statistics that scare the hell out of you. And they're manipulated to make you feel that. Why do you think they created the welfare system? Before they created the welfare system, the unemployment rate in this country was very low. Even poor people, if they wanted a job, could have a job. Even uneducated people, if they wanted a job, could have a job. Even somebody who never went to school a day in their life, if they wanted a job, could have a job. And some of those people had jobs paying more than some of you who have an education, because ditch digging is hard work. When they created the welfare system and made it easy for somebody to kick back and get the dole, they became addicted to that. When they found out they could get more money by having more kids, they began to have more kids. And they began to teach their kids how to exploit that system so that they would never have to work. When they did that, they created a dependent class of people who will never work, and their children will never work until that cycle is broken. Then they began to withdraw the benefits. What happens when you withdraw the benefits from somebody who's addicted to them? They resort to crime because they have no work ethic. They believe and have been taught that the world owes them everything. The world owes me a house. The world owes me a living. The world owes me a job. The world owes me food. The world owes me pants. The world owes me sex. The world owes me entertainment. The world owes me everything. And it's all a lie, but these people are addicted to that. They've been taught that. They believe that. It's the heart and soul of socialism. It makes children out of adults. They are now slaves of that system. The rest of America looks at them and says they're inferior. They're racially inferior, they're genetically inferior, they have no work ethic, they have no education, they don't care, they should be exterminated. They're creating crime. They scare me. I'm willing to give up my rights and their rights in order so that they can't scare me anymore and I'll be secure. This is what's happening. It's not a joke, it's not funny, it is dangerous, and it's destroying this country, folks. When they created the crime, people began to scream for protection. They then skew the figures and plant stories in the papers about guns being the cause of crime. Yet I have never seen them even once arrest a gun. Have you? Guns cause crime like flies cause garbage. But they must build this consensus of opinion before they can take guns away from the American citizens, because even though they don't teach the Constitution in the schools anymore, there is such a strong feeling in this country that freedom is attached to the ownership of weapons that they couldn't do it any other way. So they give you statistics that there are X number of people killed every day in the United States by guns. They don't break those statistics down, nor do you ask the proper questions. You just accept it. Right after Christmas, ladies and gentlemen, USA Today, in their entire newspaper, on every page and every column, ran anti-gun stories. They skewed the figures, they lied about the figures, they twisted the figures, and they did not tell us the truth. Every day, X number of people in the United States die from guns. They didn't tell you that a percentage of that figure is police officers killing criminals in the performance of a crime. They did not tell you that the majority of those figures are citizens who used a gun to protect themselves and prevent themselves from being the victims of a crime or from ending up dead themselves. They didn't tell you, when they did the story on the young man in New York City who stole a gun from his father and went out and killed several of his friends, they didn't tell you that his father was a police officer. Did they? They didn't tell you that. They made it sound like it was another wacko gun owner whose kid got his gun because his gun was in a place where the kid shouldn't have been able to get it, and the kid went out and killed some people. They conveniently left it out that the father was a police officer. And even if all guns had been confiscated from the American people, that crime still would have happened. They don't tell you those things, and you don't ask the right questions. You read it and believe it. Somebody told you it was true, so you believed it. Folks, I know this is going to come as a shock to many of you, but your concept that the press in the United States is free is totally screwed. The press is free only for the owner of the press. If the owner of the press has an agenda, that's what you're going to read in his press. There is no free press. The press is not objective. The press is strictly controlled. Any journalist will tell you that if he tries to tell you the truth, he won't have a job. You can trace the ownership of most of the newspapers, television stations, and radio stations in this country to 5 major corporations, all with interlocking members on their board of directors, all members of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, members of the Scroll and Key, the Skull and Bones, members of the Rose and Cross, Freemasons, B'nai B'rith, and many others. This is a body of people who practice a secret religion that believes that man is in the state of becoming. Becoming what? Becoming God. That there is no God of the Bible, that there is no devil, that the universe is connected together in sort of a pantheistic way, and God is in everything and in everybody. I have no bones to pick with that, because I truly and honestly believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Everyone has a right to worship at the altar of their choice. Where I draw the line is when they begin to manipulate and lie and deceive me because they want to rule the world, and that's what they want to do. They want one world government, one world religion, and believe it or not, they want one race. They call it the new root race, the 6th root race. They call it the solar man. They talk in their literature about people who cannot make the evolutionary jump into the new age will not be allowed in it. And when you read further and dig further and begin to talk to these people, you find out that what they mean by that is these people are going to be exterminated like rats. And they're talking about us. They're talking about us, folks. And don't go out of here and get mad at New Agers, our members of the Mormon Church, our Freemasons who are members of the Blue Lodges, because they don't even know what's going on. They're all looking for truth. They're all looking in a different way. Some of them are mixed up in helping to bring this about, and they don't even understand that they're part of it, because they're no different than anybody else. They don't ask the right questions. They don't even understand the symbology of the initiations and the philosophies to which they appear to subscribe. Some of them are a part of it because it brings them financial gain or materialistic gain or recognition or satisfies some personal need. You're going to see these figures skewed. You're going to see these things continue until we get smart and bring a stop to it. The Disarmament Act says plainly and simply, and it was passed in 1962, that all nations and all peoples will be disarmed around the world except for one body, and that is the police force of the United Nations. State Department publication document 7277 lays out the plan to combine the armies, navies, and air forces of the United States of America with those of Russia to make up the one world police force. That's in the process of happening now. Our military officers are attending their military academies. Their military officers are attending our military academies. Their police officers and military officers are attending our law enforcement academies all over this country. Their aircraft are overflying our country on a constant basis under what's called the Open Skies Treaty, including their bombers, including reconnaissance aircraft. Russia has people in the United States today supervising the disarmament of the United States of America. You will see consistent bills introduced, one right after the other, in the Congress. You will see the headlines blaring the death from the guns in America. You will see people innocent, wanting to make life better, standing up and screaming for disarmament of the American people. Because of all of this, and I'm going to tell you right now, when the last gun leaves the last American hand, that will be the death of freedom on this earth. So what can we do about this? We're in the final stages, folks. The disarmament plan calls for 3 stages. Actually, we're in stage 2. When it goes to stage 3, it's all over with. I suspect sometime this year you're going to see a move for massive searches, house to house, to inventory and confiscate weapons from the American people. It's already happening in some areas of the country. They are also making spot checks and searches of some cars in gas stations and on highways and taking the guns away from the people when they find them. This is already beginning. Now, some time ago I outlined several plans of action for the American people on my radio broadcast, and we have implemented these plans across the nation. One is we must get the media, or at least one major media corporation, back into the ownership of the people where it belongs. We targeted several months ago Gannett Company Incorporated. It is the largest media corporation in the United States of America, owning over 100 newspapers in major markets. USA Today belongs to Gannett Company Incorporated. So do many other major newspapers in the country. Gannett Company Incorporated is one of the largest, in fact, is the largest owner of outdoor display billboards and signs across the nation. Most billboards you see are owned by Gannett Company Incorporated. They own over 15 television stations in major markets, the largest cities in the United States. They own something like 22 AM and FM radio stations in major markets. Just think what we could do if we owned Gannett Company Incorporated. We began buying shares, myself, my radio audience, organizations, Christian groups, New Age people who, believe it or not, are just as concerned as we are, most of them who get trapped into this stuff. We are buying the stock of Gannett Company Incorporated. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if you are one of the people who have been complaining about the media in this country, about the lies that are given to us in the media, then I want you to go out and buy Gannett Company Incorporated stock, selling now for around $55, $56 a share. If you can only afford to buy one share, buy one share. If you can afford 5 shares, buy 5 shares. 2 months later, buy 5 more shares. 6 months later, buy 5 more shares or 10 shares, whatever you can afford, and keep buying those shares. Don't quit. We are going to purchase Gannett Company Incorporated. We are going to put our people on the board of directors, and they are going to print the truth. If you don't do this, I don't want to ever hear out of your mouth one single complaint about the news media in this nation ever again, because if you do, you are a liar and a hypocrite. Remember, we got ourselves in this position. Now, I'm asking you to put your money where your mouth is. I'm asking you to take the action that you've all been complaining that nobody ever gives you. I'm asking you. Just giving you one of the things that we can do. Number 2, you must begin beating on the desk of your politicians and tell them, hey, I know you're a crook. I know you're a liar. You've proved it over and over again. And don't be afraid of them. They work for you. Tell them right to their face, I know you're a crook. I know you're a liar. And I am not going to take it anymore. I am going to hold you accountable from this moment on for what you do. And if you don't do the right thing, and if you don't get this nation back on track, you are never going to hold another job in this town, not even as dog catcher. You must do it. You must call treason, treason, and you must call traitors, traitors. And if you have traitors in your city and in your state, you must make up billboards announcing that they are traitors, that they have committed treason against the people of the United States of America, that they have destroyed the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and you must post those bills on every telephone pole, every fence, and every wall in your city and in your state. And by social pressure, you must snub them at social events, in grocery stores, and everywhere else. You must let them know that we, the American people, are sick and tired of the treason that has occurred in this country, and we want it stopped. The next thing you must do is get your state constitution and the United States Constitution and read them and learn them and memorize them and teach them to your children and to your neighbors. Hold the teachers in your schools accountable to teach the Constitution of your state and of the United States of America, and teach the real history of this country and not the New World gobbledygook dribble that they're handing out to our children today. You must do this. If you don't know what your children are being taught, then you must go to the school and sit in and listen and learn what they're being taught. If you don't know what textbooks are being used in your school, you must go get those textbooks and read them and find out whether they are true or not. We found in the state of Arizona, they were teaching history to our students. That history book had 500 factual errors in it, including a statement that Harry Truman had used an atomic bomb to resolve the Korean conflict. That book is no longer in the schools in the state of Arizona. But it may be in yours It may be in yours. You must learn the definition of the militia under the law of your state and under the law of the United States. And I'm going to tell you now, in the state of Arizona, the militia consists of all able-bodied men between the ages of 17 and 43. In the United States law, the militia consists of all able-bodied men between the ages of 17 and 45. It requires that members of the militia own a rifle and ammunition. It's the law. It specifically states that this constitutes the unorganized militia. The United States Senate ruled in 1981, passed a resolution that the military is not the militia. They specifically stated in their resolution that the National Guard is not the militia. They specifically said that the militia consists of the whole body of the people. The second article and amendment says, ladies and gentlemen, that a militia being necessary to a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, if you understand what I just told you, all gun laws are unconstitutional for members of the militia. Who are members of the militia? I just gave you that under the law, and I gave it to you under a United States Senate resolution. You must form militia units. You must do it within the law. You must not allow anyone with a criminal record in your militia unit, and you must have strict organization. You must elect and appoint your officers. You must demand strict discipline. There must not be allowed any criminal act by any militia member ever. We must remain in the law. If there is ever another Waco, Texas, the militia of this country must go and stop it. We are within the law. The Declaration of Independence gives us this right, outlines the process whereby we are responsible, not privileged, not allowed, but responsible to overthrow tyranny and maintain the freedom of the people of the United States of America. The process for doing this is outlined in the law. Corruption in local cities must not be tolerated anymore. Period. We are responsible of, for, and by the people. You can blame anybody you want to. Of, for, and by the people. And don't give me this stuff, I'm only one lonely human being. I'm helpless. There's nothing that I can do. Imagine if George Washington were standing at this podium, what he would say to you. He was one lonely person. Imagine what Napoleon would have said to you. He was one lonely person. Imagine what Jesus Christ would have said to you. He was one lonely person. We are responsible, and we will be the arbiters of our own fate, whether it is to march forward into a better world or to fall backward once again into slavery. It is your choice. Thank you, and God bless you all.